Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today in a discussion of myths and missed opportunities in the Goldwater application process. I'd like to remind everyone that the PowerPoint slides for this session will be posted on the Goldwater website. Just look at the lower left of the home page for the link. Paul and I will be happy to answer any questions as we go through the slides, as well as at the end of our presentation. And all the consultants are available to discuss these points with you offline if you are interested. I'm Carrie Karuxtis, and I'll start with the first half of this presentation, and then Paul Uriyama will do the second half. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a brief outline of our presentation. Our session today has a twofold objective. First, we'd like to encourage more students to apply for the Goldwater Scholarship by dispelling any misconceptions about the review process and the manner in which scholars are selected. Our second goal is to highlight some overlooked opportunities that students should take advantage of to strengthen their applications. We'll also share some additional suggestions of ways that recommenders and campus representatives can better support their applicants. And we'd like to finish with a discussion of any other myths or missed opportunities in the application process that you might be concerned with as well. Next slide. The first myth was actually raised at one of our recent sessions with students. One particular student was quite concerned that an academic career, which included both teaching and running a research laboratory, was not a viable research path for Goldwater eligibility. We certainly want students to know that such a career plan is clearly one of the ways that research might be pursued as a Goldwater scholar. Please be sure that your students recognize that there are many venues for research careers, including academic institutions and their medical centers and research centers, private industry, national laboratories, federally funded agencies, etc. When we ask students to share their career goals in the application, we often get responses like to earn a PhD in discipline X and conduct research on topic Y. And that's fine, but they often overlook stating a potential setting for that research. And this is one area where students might use AI to see where research is currently being conducted in that intended area, particularly if the research requires highly specialized equipment or facilities or computation. Next slide. I hope this next myth is one that we've dispelled early on in our open houses. Applications are no longer reviewed by home state or institutional state. That practice ended several years ago. Reviews are conducted by discipline, such as chemistry, but applications are not necessarily read by reviewers in the student's subdiscipline, such as organic chemistry. Students should keep that in mind as they prepare their applications, particularly the research essay. Technical content should be high, but not so obscure that only specialists in the field would be able to understand the significance of the research. Okay, next slide, please. Now, there is no limit on the number of scholars that might be selected from your institution in the same discipline. So if you have two computer science majors that are applying, they could both be named Google Scholars, or excuse me, Goldwater Scholars. Chances are the applications won't be read by the same pair of reviewers. Nevertheless, recommenders should not rank the students in their letters, especially if one person is writing for both students. And in the campus representative statement, there should be no ranking of your nominees. Such ranking could inadvertently hurt the chances of an applicant. Remember, all of your nominees could be named Goldwater Scholars. Next slide, please. Now, There's sometimes a misconception that applications from sophomores are reviewed separately from the applications of juniors, etc. No, applicants are reviewed by discipline, not by year or their situation, such as veteran or transfer student. Nevertheless, as we've said many times, applications are reviewed holistically, taking into account all parts of the application and the opportunities the student has had in their given circumstances. Next slide. It's clearly not true that any one discipline receives favorable treatment in the review process. It might appear that there are many scholars in one discipline, for example, but that's just the result of the number of applications in that area. As we note here, scholars are selected among the disciplines in accordance with the percentage of applications in each discipline. So applicants in each discipline have the same likelihood of being selected as scholar. If 10% of the applications are from chemists, approximately 10% of those students will be selected as scholars. The next slide, please. The next myth is just a reminder that Goldwater scholars are selected on the basis of merit and their exceptional promise of becoming a future research leader. Those are the criteria with which you should select your nominees. In the application, there is an opportunity for students to discuss any financial hardships that they might have faced and how that situation may have impacted their educational and research opportunities. Campus reps might also comment on those challenges. Reviewers will take that information into account in their holistic review of the application. Next slide, please. Now, many times students and even their research advisors presume that without a publication, the student has no chance of being named a Goldwater Scholar. That's clearly not true. There are indeed applicants with co-authorship of a public research publication, but the lack of a publication is no excuse for not applying. What reviewers like to see is some form of a presentation of the student's research results, either at their home institution, at a local conference, or even a national or international setting. Virtual conferences are also acceptable. Now, sometimes there are factors that limit a student to on-campus presentations. For example, we recognize in many cases travel funds are limited. It would be helpful to reviewers to know if such a situation did indeed limit the student's presentation of results to their campus only. Next slide. Many students, their research advisors, and even their campus representatives presume that only applicants from research-intensive institutions are named Goldwater Scholars. Clearly, when an institution is able to nominate 4 or 5 or 6 applicants, the likelihood of having more scholars is increased. But the reality is that the institution is not a selection criteria. However, reviewers do carefully consider institutional context. So when research opportunities are limited on a campus, reviewers look for other indicators of research potential. So it's important for students to indicate how they took advantage of the opportunities that were available to them. Maybe a student sought out courses that offered opportunities for course-based research. Maybe they enrolled in an independent study course that allowed them to pursue a particular research topic or learn more about a particular research area. and many students will seek off-campus opportunities. A comment in the CR statement of the research environment on campus would help the reviewers to recognize any potential limitations. And if a letter of recommendation also emphasized that point, that would be extremely valuable as well. Next slide. One common question that we receive is whether reviewers prefer to see that an applicant has pursued many research projects. Students often think they need to fill in all 5 lines in the application that are designated for project participation. Participation in one significant research experience is definitely valued. However, whatever the student's research path, that there are certain factors that the reviewers are looking for, and I've summarized those here, that what basically is important is that the application provides a section for students to offer an explanation for the research path that they have chosen and how that path will assist them in achieving their professional goals. So encourage your students to explain their choices. Perhaps they pursued a longer-term project to potentially lead to greater outcomes, such as an publication. Alternatively, they might have chosen multiple research projects to find their true passion or to develop more skills and refine their career goals. Either situation is acceptable. Next slide, please. Now, oftentimes students are concerned that they have been unable to conduct research in their anticipated area of interest, and they think they're at a disadvantage in the competition. That's clearly a myth. Not all research areas are available on a given campus or in a summer program. And when the student hasn't been able to pursue research in their intended area, they simply should describe how their current research and their coursework are developing skills and preparing them for their future research interest. If the research mentor also spoke to this point, that would be particularly helpful as well. Next slide. Okay, it's a myth that to think that a high GPA guarantees selection as a scholar, or that a scholar can't have a more modest GPA above the 3.0 eligibility criterion. Recent scholars have had GPAs ranging from 3.15 to 4. If there have been factors that have impacted the student's academic performance, those should be described either in the application by the student, by the recommenders, or even in the CR statement. Maybe illness, personal illness, family illness, financial concerns has limited the research opportunities for the student or impacted their academic performance. Reviewers would like to be aware of that as they review the application. The next slide, please. Now, this final myth involves a concern raised by a faculty member who serves as a campus representative. He presumed that he could not write letters of recommendation for his research students who were chosen as the campus nominees. Goldwater does not view that situation as a conflict of interest. Particularly on small campuses, the campus rep is selected by the institution for the individual's research interest. And we certainly would not want to preclude the students of that faculty member from allowing their students to apply. Now, simply opting to not write a letter of recommendation isn't advised either. A missing letter from a research mentor certainly raises a red flag from the reviewers. So the campus rep should simply note in the campus rep statement that the nominee is his or her research student and definitely should include the recommendation letter in the nomination package. Okay, I will now turn presentation over to Paul.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Carrie. And so my name is Paul Yoriyama, and I'll be doing the second part of the presentation that's focused on missed opportunities. And these are situations where I, as a reviewer, had been, looking at an application. I thought, oh, if only they did this, or if only they elaborated on this, it would have been a much stronger application and so forth. And so that's what we mean by missed opportunities. And at the end, we'll have opportunities for the other reviewers to share some of theirs, the other consultants to share some of theirs if they would like to add as well, and for you to ask a question. So my first one is that the career plan is limited in scope. Or this is one of the 3 personal characteristic questions that's asked on the application. The student is asked to lay out the career plan. Uh, and again, I said here the missed opportunity that it was limited. Well, in this response, the suggestion is to describe how your undergraduate research experience supports your future goals. Okay? The student wants to provide specific plans for graduate school and even postdoctoral research if that is part of the path for that research profession. This response should set the stage for the rest of the application, okay, which is to show how the students' activities have all led toward the goal that was outlined in this career plan. This is not necessarily the place to be talking about motivations and what got you passionate about the research, although that can come in here. This is more about putting out the research plan out there. The career plan out there. Another missed opportunity is a superficial description of the most recent research experience used to answer the activity experience question. This is the second of the 3 personal characteristic questions. Okay, and well, one reason not to focus specifically on the most recent research experience is that most likely the essay is going to be based on that experience, or that experience is outlined and described in other parts of the application. For this one, the student may want to tell the story of how they came, how that activity shaped their desire to pursue the research, to pursue a career in science and engineering or math research. So in other words, take the reader into their story, have a powerful beginning, take the reader through the story, providing context and key parts of the story to help, and describing how it shaped the character, the experience will shape the character of the person as a future scientist. And then take the reader beyond by discussing how this experience will help lead to a successful scientific career. Another missed opportunity is that the applicant did not answer the optional question on diversity, economic, ethnic, and occupational family background. Again, this is optional, but if the situations exist for that student, you want to empower the response by focusing on ways in which a student dealt with a situation and the character they developed, all connecting back to how it relates to them pursuing a career in STEM, a research career in STEM. Now, even if if the person's background and experiences did not include adversity, this is still an opportunity for the applicant to let the reviewers know something about themselves, right? Describe how they were challenged, how they challenged themselves and took advantage of opportunities in order to succeed to where they are now, and how that's going to be helpful in the success in their careers. Yeah, another one is that the research essay does not clearly describe the applicant's role in the research. And that's a key part of it. The reviewers want to know the contributions that the applicant made. So carefully read the essay guidelines posted on the Goldwater Foundation website. Okay, the following information about the student's role in the research is essential in the essay. Use I when appropriate instead of we. Scientific writing tends to use that third person, but in this case, when appropriate, use I. So explain your scientific contribution or expected contribution to the work, as opposed to those with whom they may have worked. Okay. So describe your work, describe your contributions, the person's contribution. In doing this, you may tie back to research activity sections so that the two parts of the applications are complementary. Right? There's other parts of the applications where you're listing the various activities that the person was involved in. So this is an opportunity. This can be an opportunity to connect the two. Describe the skills the applicant brought to the work from prior research or course experiences. Talk about the skills they have or expect to obtain from participation in the project. Okay. Another missed opportunity is that the letter does not describe the student's role in the research, does not mention papers or presentations in preparation or plan, or does not assess research potential, etc. The primary purpose of the letters is to assess research potential. The letter should focus on research rather than the performance in a classroom. This is right. Letter writing guidance that is posted on the Goldwater website was developed using reviewers' input. Okay, so these are reviewers um, um, essentially telling the students, well, what makes a useful, powerful, compelling letter? So a downloadable version of that guidance is available at the Goldwater website. And then finally, a missed opportunity is that the campus representative does not provide a CR statement. Well, Carrie, in her part, described several situations where the CR could add additional insight to the application. Some other suggestions are that it could be a useful place to give insights into the thought process for nominating the student, give context for any aspect of the application that could help the reviewer, um, again, understand the context, additional information about the applicant, or explanation for apparent inconsistencies. For example, if for whatever reason the mentor couldn't write a letter, that should be explained here. So those are the slides that we have. I think the floor is open for discussion or questions, and or if the other consultants would like to describe additional missed opportunities. Okay, so there is a comment, a question in the chat. I have two questions. If an applicant is from an R1 institution and has not faced any personal challenges that limited their ability to participate in a research project, but would like to engage in research opportunities in the future, would this applicant still be considered competitive? Okay. If an applicant from 1 second, if someone else would like to respond while I am finishing thinking about this, that's helpful too. Okay. And number two is, how is an applicant who has had multiple research experiences in different fields evaluated compared to an applicant who has had multiple research experiences in the same field, particularly when the latter aligns with their career goals? I think I'll open it to the consultants.
So I would say I think both are equally competitive. I've been reviewing for, I don't know, 12 years or longer, and either one of those could clearly be a Goldwater scholar. So I don't think there's one advantage for one over the other. A person who's done a lot of research in one area, or a person that, like Paul said, can fill out all five categories of research activities. I don't, it doesn't really matter. What matters to me is the potential they show, the drive they demonstrate, the creativity and critical thinking that they illustrate. That's what I care about. Um,
I mean, an applicant could be having, for this is for question number two, that they may have had multiple research experiences for various reasons. They're exploring various fields of interest, and that could be leading to a better defined career path that they intend to pursue. It could be that um, they there's just different aspect of the field that they're in that they're curious about. Um, and so I think that those things can be communicated. It gives insight. If the rationale for that is communicated, it gives insight into the motivations of the student, of the applicant as well.
I would add that in discussions we've had among the reviewers, what reviewers do like to see is students take a project to at least the presentation level. And so I would encourage you to mention that to your students, that from inception to or conception to actual presentation of results shows kind of the whole research experience. And so, as I said, in discussions we've had among reviewers, that's one thing that often comes up.
And the
Oh,
first question, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to make a comment, and that is when we're reviewing these applications, and I've said this 3,000 times, it's a holistic process. So you're looking at everything, which includes obviously how do the recommendation letters dovetail with the students' presentations, with student research, with a personal statement, and so on. So it's very important that the letters of recommendation do match some of these points with the students are making. And for example, where you Carrie was beginning mentioning whether it is relevant to have a publication or not. Obviously, it is, but it is very important that whoever is the PI in that publication writes a recommendation letter where he or she states what the student contributed to the overall publication. So the student is irrelevant. But the reality, if there is conception, if there is input in the final product, that is extremely important. So my point being that the recommendation letters should uh, match or or contribute to all the other aspects of the application where possible.
I'd like to
And
try to take a shot at that. The first question there about if an applicant's from an R1, not faced any personal challenges. And I want to go back to what Paul mentioned when he said, you know, there's an opportunity for students to add additional information that shows how they've maybe been disadvantaged or whatever. I had one student one time that really impressed me in this optional section. They said, I've had a very privileged background. My mom is a physician who teaches at listed a medical school and does clinical research there. My dad has a PhD in, well, in my case, chemistry, and has done research his entire career. And the kid talked about how these experiences from his parents solidified his desire to be a research scientist and how that was sort of driving him to be successful. I always thought of the opportunity one as, okay, you know, I was homeless for 6 months and my family had to live in a tent and I had to walk a mile to school every day and I still did research all summer. And by the way, I read that letter too. I got one just like that. And so that this one where the kid was describing his privileged background, I had never thought that I would see something like that in that optional section, but it was actually very impactful.
I'm just wondering from the first question if you're describing a situation where the student hasn't yet done any research. Is it a case where students are exploring different majors and that's why they haven't gotten involved in research? Or have they just taken a course that might have had a research course-based research laboratory associated with it and been turned on to research? Is that something that they can talk about? Those that would certainly help. If an applicant hasn't done any research in a course or outside of classes, they still can write a research proposal for their research essay. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, probably to provide a rationale for why they haven't been involved in research, but there certainly could be reasons why. Maybe a little more context would help. Research, okay, yeah. I hope the student maybe in a course has been assigned a particular research exercise that might maybe has helped them see that that's a direction that they'd like to go in. Maybe we could explore that.
So the reason why the lack of experience is not helpful toward competitiveness is not that the reviewers are, counting and wanting to give the award to the student with the most set of experiences. It's that if they don't have experience as a reviewer, we have nothing to go on, right? We have no sense of um, are they capable in the lab? Are they able to think through a process? Are they able to put together a research idea and see it to some sort of completion? And then you also, of course, wonder about things like motivation. How motivated are they toward a research career if they haven't been involved in research? Now, there could be reasons why they don't have that research experience. And so if it's within that context and if it makes sense within that context, and if the other activities still support, the other things that the students have been involved in still support a compelling case for research potential, then it's not as much of a handicap. If it's not, then it's not as much of a handicap. I have several students who have listed a high school teacher as a potential letter writer.
Yeah.
Should this be discouraged? It depends on what that high school experience was. I mean, if it was one where it was part of a class and they did research over the summer, and it was part of a planned activity, then for me that's less helpful of a potential letter writer. But if that student went out on their own and contacted professors at the region at a neighborhood at the university that's in their town or city, and if they had oh no, sorry, I misunderstood the question. If listed a high school teacher. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. I thought it was a high school student getting involved and talking about their high school experience. I would say that a high school teacher in most cases don't have the experience in research to be able to assess research potential in the way that the Goldwater reviewers are thinking.
I'll give one example where it might be appropriate. So I was reviewing in a state when we did it by states, and the high school was one of those math and science schools that was associated with the university. And so the student had been doing research with his math and science high school linked to someone at the university. And so the student had done research for several years as a high school student. And then when they went to the same university for freshman and sophomore years. And so then there were sort of like two research mentors. There was the one from the high school, and there was the one from the university. And so I think in that case, because they were doing pretty serious research. I mean, it was dealing with water quality, but it's still pretty serious research uh, from at the high school. And so I think in that case it would be appropriate. But in general, if it's just a high school teacher that had them in physics or math or chemistry or whatever, I would say, like Paul said, I would say find someone else.
Okay, there's Nasreen posted a question. On the website, students are encouraged to demonstrate that they think like a scientist in their research essay. Can you give a good versus a bad way of doing this, please? Probably a less effective way is to say, to say, I think like a scientist because I noticed this and then I did this, and so, something like that. If it's one where you're weaving the thought process into the development of the essay, and you see how the student tried this and got this result, but it didn't make sense, and so they went out into the literature and developed multiple hypotheses and then tried them out, right? Then that's a think like a scientist. That's a description of thinking like a scientist, because we see that, well, that's what they're doing. They're not necessarily saying that that's what they're doing, but they're showing. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, they're using the scientific method as opposed to not questioning a result, just assuming a particular result is correct without trying to explore reasons for that result.
A perfectly fine thing to do with an essay is to give a negative result, to show how the student tried something, the result was negative, or that it didn't work the first time, right? And then
Right.
what did they do to get it to work if they eventually did? Or if it is negative, um, in what way did they learn about the project that they did take on, and how is that project going to be changed, or how is it going to evolve to try the next thing? Right? Those are all examples of thinking through, thinking like a scientist.
Feel free to raise questions by unmuting. No need to always use the chat. And does anyone go ahead?
I was just going to say, are there other missed opportunities that others would like to share?
Or any other myths that people might have that they're concerned
Something you want to
about?
confirm whether it is a myth or not.
Yeah.
The missed slide addressing limited research opportunities. Okay. Limited.
I was going to mention one quick thing for the CRs, and that is if you notice when you look at the application that some of these items is missing, that perhaps there's a connection between X and Y that is not stated or so on. There's a paragraph where you assess and address the applicant. Make sure you do mention that issue in there. Like, for example, regardless of what the student is saying, the contribution of the student to this project was this much, or talking to his mentor, it turns out that the student did much more than what the student is actually um, claiming he or she did. All those statements from the CR help us as reviewers.
Okay, so there was a question. Can you please return to the myth slide about addressing limited research opportunities? And so was there a question related to this, or you just would like to just see the slide again? Okay. And okay, so there's another comment on here. Whoops, I just want to catch, okay. So the person just wanted to catch all the text on the slide. The next question, I am wondering about MD PhD students. Is there research that they would conduct in the future that is too clinical? I have heard about this. So where is the line between research that Goldwater would support and research that's too clinical, which Goldwater would not support? I think that's essentially the question.
Well, I'll say when I reviewed by state, I would review MD, PhD files. Now I just do chemistry. But pure fundamental basic research or clinical research, I consider both of them research. Because you're in the clinical approach, yeah, you've got people coming into your clinic, you're gathering data, you're trying to figure out what's going on, what's wrong here. Can I use my research ability and this information I've gotten from these 10 patients to make some hypothesis about what's going on here. So too clinical, I don't, I mean, as research is research, whether it involves, fundamental particle physics or whether it involves 5,000 patients who you're trying to figure out how COVID does what to what. That's still research.
Let me jump in here on this one. Goldwater does not fund students who want to pursue clinical professional careers, i.e. be a doctor. If a doctor is doing translational research, bench to bedside kinds of work, that's appropriate. And certainly being a doctor and treating patients is an admirable career, but it's just not something that Goldwater supports. So the reviewers who look at the students interested in pursuing medical research careers, Goldwater is all about research, are trying to understand whether or not the student truly wants to pursue a research career in medicine. So it's a higher bar that the students have to jump over, basically, in their attempt to make sure the reviewers understand that it's a medical research career that they intend to pursue and not a clinical career. The same thing is true in engineering. Designing bridges is what a lot of engineers do. It's not research, it's design. And so, someone in engineering, what we'd be looking for is, are they looking for new materials to build a stronger bridge? So there are areas in Goldwater that we just don't support, even though they're quite viable career paths.
But they could, John, design 10 different bridges that are different and test and find out which one is
Yep.
the best.
That's a good
Might work.
example.
Yeah.
Shall we close the session if there are no more questions? Carrie, what, I'll let.
Yeah, well, we do hope that these slides helped as you work with your students to prepare their applications. And if you think of a question down the road or a myth, missed opportunity, we'll be happy to discuss it with you offline. Next week is an open house, question and answer session. So that would be a good time to bring any questions that you have that have come up so far. And
Yeah, please do ask if you're not sure if something you've heard is a myth.
yeah,
And same thing too, we would same thing with the missed opportunity. Feel free to give feedback.
okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for joining us.
Carrie and Paul, can you stick around for a second?